Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with St. Louis-based trombonist and bandleader John Covelli of the Hard Bop Messengers. He opened up about their 2022 Live at the Last Hotel CD. It's a jazz album that literally tells a story. It was born from a residency at the Real Last Hotel in downtown St. Louis. Each song paints a picture with bounce and bustle that takes the listener to a place and time that somehow feels both nostalgic and modern. John has played in dozens of bands over the years and learned just as many styles. His compositions are full of influences like Latin funk, chamber classical, soul, blues, and rock, and he hopes the result, as always, will get the audience tapping their toes and bobbing their heads along with every single song. Enjoy this story.
Yeah, hey, John Covelli, it's Joe Domino.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
What's up, man? How's life?
Oh, life is good. Life is good. I just got good news that my vinyl, my records are ready for pickup, and I've been waiting and hoping, and so you just kind of caught me on it's one of those roller coaster rides when you're doing all this yourself. As soon as he said they're ready for pickup, I texted my wife and I said, we got to figure out how to drive to Kentucky.
Where are you at right now?
I'm in St. Louis. St. Louis guy.
Cool.
I was, expecting the records to be done June, of course, end of May, and at that time I thought things were loose enough I could probably, at any moment, drop what I'm doing and drive to Kentucky and pick them up, and now things are tighter with the shows coming and all that, so, but anyway, thanks for calling.
Yeah, man, thanks for reaching out. I'm so glad you heard the audio segment on the show. Typically, I do interviews with most of the new musicians and groups out there that I haven't had on the show, but it's been so hectic, so I'm glad you snipped it out and you're up for it, so it's good to catch up with you.
Well, I appreciate it. I just, as I said, I was sitting there with my wife and said, "Oh, this guy Joe played a song on his show," and I pulled it up online, and what you said just really knocked me out. So, and then I kind of forgot about it, and then I stumbled onto your Neon Jazz show and started listening to some segments and reading more about you, and that's what kind of made me think I could reach out.
It's funny. It's kind of serendipitous. You just got good news. And I'm calling you, but when you reached out to me and I read your email, I actually was in the middle or the first part of a rather lengthy road trip that I just got off of. We went up to Pine, Colorado to a wedding, and it was,
wow.
It was like a Hallmark Channel movie. So I read your email and I'm looking at these mountains and we're looking around and I'm like, wow. And we ended up going from there to Vegas, and then we went to San Diego, and I flew back from there. So the timing of your email, kind of being on vacation and disconnecting, that was a really welcome message. So
that's neat. That's really cool.
It was great. So I guess my question to you is, how have you been doing now that the world's been waking up from COVID, and how did you survive that whole 2-year period where live music crippled the jazz industry?
Well, for me, I did something I've never done. I wrote an album. I had started to think during our 6-month residency at the Last Hotel that, if the residency was going to keep up, I was going to record us every Friday night and put out an album of us playing live. But playing the stuff we had, been playing, which is Horace Silver, Clifford Brown, hard bop classics that really weren't being played around town and really were kind of like my favorite music I always wanted to play. And here I was, my first ever residency of my own. And so I was playing what I wanted us to play and having a ball. And I'm like, God, I got to record these guys. These guys are great. If I get a sub, he's equally as good. Like, this is fun. And then when the pandemic hit, I had started already to write a song that reminded me of The Lobby of the hotel, and I kind of fashioned it around sort of like Joy Spring, the Clifford Brown tune, and so I had written this song, and within a month of the end of the gigs, the guys in the band were like, "Let's play your song like everybody's doing those videos, everybody's at home in their basement videos, four boxes on a screen or whatever, you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
And so we did it. We played my composition. At that time, it didn't have lyrics yet, and we played it, and the hotel loved it, so they posted it, and we shared it, and then it started to look like not only were things going to be shut down for a while, but my wife was starting to say stuff like, "If you're going to sit there and pout and watch Netflix, I'm not going to tolerate that." And I was like, okay, well, I had these musical ideas, and I just kind of started using my time to write. And I'd never really done that before. I never really had the confidence to do that. I never really had the time to just write music and not really worry about if it was going to be heard or not, or if anybody would like it. As far as I could tell, nobody was going to hear this music ever because the pandemic looked pretty bleak. But within about 6 months, I had at least 8 songs written with the intent of painting a picture of the hotel or life in a hotel. Then I met my vocalist, Matt, and that's really when my brain exploded, because I realized all along I sort of had been making notes like character study notes, backstory. I had been writing down a lot of stuff in my spare time as if I was going to write a play. And so when I met Matt and we talked about vocal styles and jazz vocals in particular, and how we both agreed that we didn't like certain styles and we did like other styles, I started writing lyrics for him to sing to go with the music I had written. Then I knew I had an album to make, and so then 6 months later we went into the studio and recorded, and we did it all in 2 days, and that was that.
I love it how efficient you jazz musicians are when you get to the studio. It's like, sometimes you'll hear how these big bands go in and it drags out for weeks and weeks. But you guys just sit there like ninjas and knock it out.
I just heard someone talking about that on I think it was WTF podcast. Oh, yeah. Jerry Harrison on Mark Maron's podcast was talking about when they recorded, maybe it was Fear of Music, and in the same time, I think they did it in a week or 2 weeks, and in the same building was, I think, Aerosmith, and they bumped into each other, and it was like, yeah, we just made our album in 2 weeks, and they were like, oh my God, it took us 2 weeks to do half of this one song. Like it was just, like exactly what you said. It just, I wanted to make a Blue Note album, and that's how they did it, man, right? You know that. Like they have a day and they cut 4 songs. The next day they'd cut another 4 or whatever. Our constraints were not, for me, optimum. I wanted to have 3 full days. It turned into 2.5 and then really 2 because of an equipment error. And I couldn't rehearse the guys because everybody's just so busy. So by that time, everybody was taking as many gigs as they could because, at least in St. Louis, people were starting to be stupid and open back up. But all of us musicians were like, fuck, I'm playing. Right? Pardon my French.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Are you recording, or I don't know how you're doing this, but are you just kind of soaking it in?
Yeah, no, I'm recording. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. So you have to bleep that out.
I'll put a honk in there. I always like to do it, yeah. So.
Yeah. Or like a tritone with a trumpet and tenor.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so when I was like, okay, we're going to record in July, who can rehearse? And crickets. Nobody, I couldn't. So no full band rehearsals. We get in there 2 days. So we'd rehearse a song, we'd talk it through, and we'd do one or maybe 2 takes and then have to move on. And me being a guy who hates the sound of his own playing, it took me a couple of months after the session of constant listening, thinking, how am I gonna let this be put out? Because I'm terrible. And it just took me that long to get over myself and realize that the playing on the album by the band was really special, and that I couldn't keep that from coming out. And that won over. But I didn't necessarily want it to be efficient. I would have loved to have a week and waste some more time.
Yeah, well, and I know that it's about dollars and cents too. A band like Aerosmith has all that disposable income, so I think that's one factor.
For sure. And I had savings from a bonus that my wife said, spend this on your album because I'm tired of hearing you complain that you don't have any representative material, and so take this money and make your album, kind of like, let's just get you to shut up about it. And so I didn't have a lot of money, and I got a really great deal from this friend of mine who's a really great engineer. On that side note, I asked Jack Bowers to do a review, and I don't think it's published yet. But I got to see it, and that was the one bad mark, was the fidelity. He didn't like the sound of the album. He thought that really detracted. And I thought, well, that's not something that I can disagree with. But I really didn't have a choice, I don't think. I think it came out sounding the way I wanted it to sound, frankly. But I don't think you can please everybody.
You can't, no, and that's why they're called critics.
So, right, and I asked for it. I reached out to him and said, hey, can you write a review? So, I asked for it, and I read his reviews, and he doesn't give, a lot of high marks, and so I have to take all that with a grain of salt. I'm not used to being in this position, and it's a good learning experience for me. I'm growing up.
What do you ultimately want the listeners to get from this album?
The album tells a story, and I really, what I want most from the listener is just that they'll listen to the whole album, and to say all I want is this, and it's asking for the moon, because today nobody has time to do this, to listen to every song in the order that it's meant to be in, and read the liner notes, or in this case, the album or the CD or the record. You'll open it up, it's gatefold, and it has the story synopsis in it. And the story synopsis, tells the story that I'm trying to tell. And so really, if I could answer your question briefly, I would say all I want is for the listener to listen to the album and get the story that I'm trying to tell. And I hope they enjoy it along the way. I think it's a variety. We purposely made a lot of the songs kind of short because of the vinyl constraints. I knew I was kind of limited to 20 minutes per side for a vinyl record, because any more than that and you lose decibel potential. And so with that in mind, I had tight arrangements, and then I had 2 songs that are digital bonus tracks. Those are, one of them is kind of long, 9 minutes, but I think it's enjoyable music. I just really, want people to listen and enjoy it.
So you mentioned St. Louis. I'm curious, what's the scene like in St. Louis? And I guess even with that in mind, kind of where were you born and raised, and how did you get to this point?
Yeah, I was born in Peoria, Illinois, which is kind of halfway between here and Chicago. My dad was from Chicago. He settled in Peoria, met my mother. They were school teachers. We grew up. Music was important. Education was important. And so when it came time to go to college, I was pretty stumped. I really didn't want to study anything but music. And I met a college rep who was selling Webster University. And the selling point was that I wouldn't have to take math and science anymore. So I enrolled at Webster. That was 1983, and I got my bachelor's in 4 years, and I did the graduate assistantship for 2 years, and that's what brought me to St. Louis. And then I started playing in a rock band, which got pretty popular, and that's how I met my wife. So, you know, I've been here ever since. Let's see, what else did you ask?
Well, I guess
what the
like?
Scene is like. Yeah, so the scene in St. Louis has changed since 1989, as you can imagine. The music scene in general has gone from cover bands and original bands in the late 80s, early 90s, to, all the way through into where it was before the pandemic is mostly cover bands. So the sort of the original music scene, I would say, has been squeezed or just kind of withered. There are bands that play cover music, but the people come out more for cover groups, and we're also such a big sports fan base. There's only so much attention that people have, and there's only so much money they want to spend and time away from their home. So, I realize that people have a choice to do with, how to spend their time, and I think, right now, original music is probably not what people are going to gamble on as much as they are cover bands and sporting events. With jazz in particular, there is an organization called the Kranzberg Foundation here in St. Louis, which I feel like has kind of single-handedly created a powerhouse for all the arts, theater, visual art, jazz, and other types of music, and partnered with other organizations like Jazz St. Louis to really create more of a thriving scene for jazz. And, that was kind of what I wanted to be a part of after all these years playing music here in St. Louis for, 3 decades. When my kids got old enough to do high school and college and stuff, and I could start spending more time out playing gigs or working on music stuff, I've been playing in all kinds of different bands, but I really decided I wanted to put together a jazz group and try and be a part of the music scene in a jazz way. And that's when I formed the Hardbop Messengers in 2017. I was seeing that most jazz groups that, were, kind of incorporating fusion or electronic instruments or current music styles, and that's all lovely music. But where my heart was hard bop and acoustic instruments, and so that's been my mission. The top talent in town, finding people that wanted to play this style, and then trying to put together a 5-piece that was, of course, economically challenging. So I was only playing like 3 shows a week that would have been great. 3 shows a year until the residency happened. And then we were every Friday night, which was a dream come true.
So what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What motivates you the most?
I talked to my therapist a lot about that. Frankly, as a child, I wanted to please people. My parents would have a living room full of people, and they would they would look at me and my brother and say, it's time. And my brother hated that moment. Going to get his violin. He really did not enjoy playing his violin for the room full of people. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of that. As I progressed through school band and high school band and then playing in nightclubs as a teenager, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere of live music and playing music with other people, and seeing people enjoy music. That's just what really motivated me, and that's what kind of led me to choose hard bop, because I would see that people really enjoyed these Horace Silver tunes. They were really funky, they were groovy, bluesy, fun to listen to. Not like late 60s where it gets a little free and, as my father-in-law would say, lose the melody. I kind of could see how an audience would be not comfortable with some of that. And I'm not discouraging any of it. I love free jazz. I love a lot of styles, but when it came down to what I wanted to sort of fight for, it was music music that the audience would enjoy, and that we would enjoy making. So that, like, the equality statement, the equation, if it were math, it would be audience enjoyment equals musician enjoyment. And I think that's what we put together, and then proved it in the laboratory, the last hotel lobby. Because we would watch people come off the elevator, every intent of walking out the front door of the hotel. They would stop, look up, hear us play. They would walk over to the bar, have a drink, sit down for a while, tap their foot. I mean, I was just in heaven, because I'm like, oh my God, this works. I'm not the only one who likes this music. And that's, that was a blessing.
So speaking of live music, if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see any jazz show live, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
I'm going to see Wayne Shorter and Miles Davis, the quintet of the 60s, because, that group was spontaneity, obviously, to the max, and Wayne Shorter is probably my favorite jazz composer, and who I aspire to improvise like. I just loved Wayne Shorter, and when I discovered that the studio albums of the Miles Davis Quintet were not indicative of the live performances of that quintet in terms of Wayne Shorter's playing, I was completely surprised that they hadn't released any of that stuff. And when they started releasing it, the Columbia Bootleg series, first the first one was Live at the Plug Nickel, which was like a double record set that you hit. And this is back in the 80s. You could buy that set once, CDs were in full swing, and, the mid 2000s, Columbia started releasing these sets, and I was just totally blown away at that live sound of that quintet. And so that's definitely where I would go. Because while I'm there, I'm probably going to bump into Coltrane and all these other guys, who I would love to see as well.
Now that, COVID's kind of eased up a little bit, have you had shows and noticed that there's a difference with the audiences?
For sure. I mean, I play in several other bands. One is a ska band, and one is a band I actually just stepped away from called the Groove Liner, a really great funky rock soul band. These are gigs where 3 years ago, I would have expected a packed house. Now it's just not like that, and I can't expect that. I can't assume that because the house isn't packed doesn't mean that we're not a draw. It's just people are still wary, and I don't know if COVID's over. I don't know if monkeypox is starting. I just went to the grocery store last night, and I saw that most people walking in the store had masks on. And I was like, oh my gosh, are we doing that again? Because I thought it was over. And the first thing that hit me was, oh my God, what if my shows get canceled? In 10 days, these shows that I've been like going nuts to promote and get together, like anything can happen. Like they could cancel the event if somebody got COVID, or I don't know. So I don't know what to expect in gigs and crowds. I just think, sorry for the meandering here, but I think about it all the time. I think because my focus is always the audience and the attendance, I'm always keying in on who's at the show, and I'm watching them. Are they enjoying this music? In a packed show in the old days, you could tell right away if they liked it or not. If they're moving, they are liking it. If they're just standing and staring, they might not be enjoying it on the gut level. Now, you really can't tell as much because it's not packed. They're spread out. They're not interacting with one another. They're not sharing that physical sense of being right next to someone experiencing that music and processing it in their body. They're spread out, and that dissipates the vibe, I think. And I'm sensitive to that and try not to be, because that could just be the future. And heck, someday we might all be just holographic projections in everybody's living room. There might not be any of what I've been talking about, where the crowd is there and sweating and yelling and feeling it,
Let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into a younger version of yourself, maybe in your 20s, and you could give your younger version one piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained over all these years. What would you tell your younger version?
Oh, yeah, man. Definitely another topic I was just discussing with my therapist. I mean, literally, this passion for music that I have has been a life thing. And I haven't really, people would say in college, enjoy the process. And I'd be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I would try and explain that differently to the younger version of myself, because it didn't get through in those words. I think what I would say is you have a gift you have a gift that a lot of people wish they had. Think about what good you can bring and not about what is missing, what you think you should have and you don't have. Focus on what productive things you can do with the gift. Isolate the issues that you want to work out specifically. And then work on them. That is something I didn't know until much later in life, when I started teaching trombone lessons, was I never knew how to practice my horn. I hated the isolation of it. I hated being by myself to practice my trombone. So I always played along with records, and I closed my eyes and I imagined that I was in Maynard Ferguson's band, or Bill Watrous' band. I would go back to that younger version of myself and say, you need to practice. I know you don't know what to practice. Just find a thing that you are not doing to up to your own standards, and list it down, and then practice it a little bit every day, over and over, and you'll get better. And it's that simple. I made it so difficult when I was young, because I was worried about all these things, and the worry didn't get me anywhere. The worry just made me unhappy along the way, and feeling like I was less than. And the thing is, to the average music listener, they don't know any of that. They love music. They can't do music. They don't understand music. They just hear it, and it makes them feel good. So just make people feel good. That's, it's so simple. And, that's what I would say. I've been encouraged lately to do that, actually to say that to that person, because that person is still there. And sometimes that person needs to be honored, but isn't in charge anymore. The adult John is in charge and can do things about the situation in a productive way. And so that's just what I'm finally learning. 57
Cool.
years old.
I get it. Believe me, there's things that just take a while. I don't know that we should feel bad about it. I think it's the process of life. It's probably just proof that we don't have enough time.
That's right. I just heard an economist yesterday talking about this, the becoming something over lifetime. And if you this is what I would say to that person. I would just say, think of what you want to become, and then just work at becoming that, and you'll never get there. And just accept that. They were talking about a lot of things in this show. It's a podcast I listen to a lot, but the becoming of a human is so much more productive than not trying, I guess, was the point. And as humans, we're hopefully just trying to become something, and we're never quite there.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
Well, that has changed a lot because of this album. And I wish I could say it came from within, but it has come from people's reactions. I've seen people on the scene that heard I had made a record, and they're like, dude, that is really something. And I had to realize that. My kids and my wife, they think the same of me. Like I'm a really great guy. I've always seen myself as a good person, but trying to figure out what I wasn't doing right to be better. And now, so for an example, I met with 2 choreographers who we're going to choreograph the entire album and perform it live on stage with the musical group. And we tested this at Washington University. The head of the department choreographed 2 selections and did it in his spring show. And it worked. It worked really, really well. And in the program, I'll try to say this without crying. In the program, I was listed as the guest composer. I hadn't considered that yet, that I was a composer. And so I saw that, and I thought, well, I'm a composer. Of course, someone might say, well, don't let this world define you. You define yourself. But I cannot downplay the feeling I got when I saw in the program me and a little biography as the guest composer. And now he and another person are teaming up to do the whole album. So, it must be good. It must be good enough, that they would want to focus on this for what's probably going to be a year and a half. Gosh, I feel like I'm not even answering your question because it's maybe so hard to answer for me. Ask it again and let me.
No. I think sometimes this turns into a PhD kind of dissertation thought, but it's not. Sure. You answered it, and I think I think what I've noticed with this question, the brevity of it is the most powerful part of it. So you totally answered it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's, This is the last. It was the last question. I saved the hardest for last. So, John, thank you for opening up. Thank you for reaching out to me. It's been great to have you on the show. I look forward to having you on more. So, thanks and good luck with everything.
Joe, it's been my honor. Thank you so much for letting me come on.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in St. Louis, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to John for his time, music, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for all things Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. And finally, you can go to joedomino.com and kick in, help out a little bit via Patreon or PayPal. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.